Warning. Warning. The following information has not been approved by the Trust and Safety Council. Viewing or disseminating this content may result in a reduction of your social score. This change will be instant and permanent, and cannot be appealed. If this material was sent to you by private message, or posted on a public page, click the report button, or call the U.S. Hate Crime Hotline to alert the authorities. Your biometric information including heartbeat and facial expression may be recorded by your device while viewing this broadcast. This message brought to you by the Independent Oversight Board.
It's a scam.
Did it get hot? I got hairy legs.
Sometimes they're beginning to buy the conspiracy theories.
America is awake.
What about microchipping your child?
Give me a fucking gun, I'll shoot you.
I would fucking die for Trump 2020. I would die for him.
I'm on, man.
Disinformation campaigns are so effective because they don't have to be false. It can be true information that is misallocated.
How can you tell me that it's too much to ask to be a human being?
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Why am I not appearing? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Harrison Smith here, Off Limits News. Hopefully you can hear me. Let me know if any problems hearing me, or if I have an echo or anything. I have an echo in my ear. Hopefully that's not coming through. But y'all let me know in the chat on YouTube if that's happening. Also let me know in the chat on D-Live if I'm even showing up there. Not too sure what I'm doing. I'll go ahead and fire my name key for those of you who don't know who I am. Of course, you can ignore that Twitter handle because that no longer exists. And I'm not even going to talk about that. I'm not even going to talk about the fact that I was permanently suspended from Twitter yesterday for absolutely no reason. Is there an echo? I hear an echo on me, and I don't want to keep doing this if there's just this absurd echo the entire time. I can't even see the live chat. Seriously, let me know if y'all are hearing this echo. So what are we going to do here today? Today I have quite the production for you. In fact, it's going to be a marathon sort of session here as we burn our way through this hefty document. It is entitled Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development by the Rockefeller Foundation. We'll be going through the entire thing, and I'll also be going down a slight rabbit hole in order to reveal to you who's behind this and the reason that they're putting it out. I really hope my audio sounds better than it does in my ears, because I'm about to do this for a long time, and it'd be very upsetting if I talk for like an hour and a half and it's not even useful. So I'm going to go ahead and pull myself up on the old YouTube and see if it's okay. This is cool, right? This is, y'all are down with this? This is the typical, like, streaming etiquette, is you're allowed just to waste a bunch of time because your technology is we're figuring it out, all right? We're all figuring it out together. But now I'm trying to listen to myself here. Oh, it sounds great. It sounds amazing. Oh, look, I can see y'all chatting here. Hey, a bunch of people are chatting. Hell yeah. Well, I don't see it on my YouTubes. It's not showing up. I thought there wasn't anybody here. A bunch of guys are here. Hi, how is everybody? Well, that's exciting. I actually have an audience. Cool. All right, I guess the live chat is just sort of messing up, so I'm not actually seeing it, but maybe I can pull it up over here. Cool. Hey, yeah, a bunch of people. Phil Swift, BLT, Mob Tech. Awesome. You can only hear in your left ear. That is definitely my fault. If only I knew how to fix it. Oh, I bet I can figure it out. Am I a genius? Did I do it? Is it coming in both of your ears now? Mob Tech? Hello, Berzu. I'm actually not on OBS. I'm on vMix, and it's actually awesome. I just am a little bit out of practice with it. Okay, now that I know that all is well, then we can dive right into it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a thorough deep dive into the Rockefeller Foundation's white paper entitled Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. There it is. There you can see the cover page, and we'll be breaking this down page by page, piece by piece, and going down a slight rabbit hole detour here in the very beginning as we lay out who exactly was in charge of putting this catastrophe together. So again, Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development. This was put out by the Rockefeller Foundation in coordination with the Global Business Network. Now, this was put out in 2010. It's an important year to remember and to keep reminding yourself that this came out 10 years ago because of what we're going to see, the way it describes things, the way it projects into the future, which is actually our past. It can get a little confusing, but this came out 10 years ago from the Rockefeller Foundation. And the reason this is important is because things like the Rockefeller Foundation, things like Davos, things like Bilderberg, these are the organizational headquarters of the New World Order, of the globalist neoliberal powers that be. They have all of these different engines, right? All of these different organs. They have NGOs, they have governmental projects, they have secret deep state sort of stuff. They have seemingly legitimate things. Obviously, big tech companies are all members of this, and they all need a coordinating overseer. And that's where things like the Rockefeller Foundation come in. And that's why you have big secret meetings like Bilderberg, where all of the world leaders go and get together and they set their agenda for the next year. They decide what the big barriers to their nefarious plans are and how to overcome them. And they all get on the same page so they can all be acting independently with very little coordination outside of these central planning offices. And yet they're all moving towards the same goal, which is how we see the organization, why things like conspiracies pop up and why they're so hard to prove, is because it is people acting independently, but they're all on the same path. They're all going towards the same goals. They're all aligned in their ideology and their the ways in which they bring about the world that they want to see. And this is one of the papers. This is one of the sort of organizing artifacts, right? So this came out in 2010 and produced by the Rockefeller Foundation and Business Global Network. And it begins with two letters from Judith Roden and Peter Schwartz. So Judith Roden, or Roden, is the president of the Rockefeller Foundation at the time that this was put out. So we're going to do a little research on her. If you go to her Wikipedia article, you can see she's a philanthropist, and this is a word that we'll see pop up time and time again, and we'll get into why they love this word so much and what this word really means. She was the president of the Rockefeller Foundation from 2005 until 2017. Not too much interesting in her early life or her career for that matter. She's basically been a lifelong teacher, professor, leader of, I think, Penn State. She was born Jewish in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I don't know what the over-under is on that, but there you have it. But we can go down here past Rockefeller Foundation that she joined in 2005, or became president of, to other professional work, where it says Roden is on the board of directors of the Trilogy Education Services, Citigroup, and Comcast Corporation. Now, you might only recognize the name of two of those, but if you do, you should realize that these are two of the most despised and hated globalist organizations out there, Citigroup and Comcast. If you want to name two companies that have had an outsized influence in the destruction of humanity, Citigroup and Comcast might be two that you would point to, and here she is serving on their board of directors. She's also served as on the boards of various corporations, including Aetna, Electronics Data System, and BlackRock. Now, BlackRock is, to me, the most interesting one of these, and if you look up BlackRock on Wikipedia or anywhere, really, and this would be a rabbit hole too deep to delve in today's program, but I highly suggest you do as much research as possible into the BlackRock organization. As it says here on Wikipedia, due to its power and sheer size and scope of financial assets and activities, BlackRock has been called the world's largest shadow bank. And so these are the type of people that are putting out this white paper, that are in charge of this organization. They are globalists to a T. They are corporatist. They are the elite of the elite. They run operations like BlackRock, Blackwater as well. Comcast, Citigroup, which of course is one of the biggest banking combines in the entire world. These are the type of people that are putting this out. So keep that in mind when you think about what their purpose is for doing what they do. The second letter is from Peter Schwartz. He's co-founder and chairman of Global Business Network, which you remember basically put this paper out in conjunction with, or at the behest of, the Rockefeller Foundation. So Peter Schwartz was sort of the architect behind the white paper we're about to read. Getting into his history, we go down several rabbit holes. We are exploring an entire rabbit warren here as we delve into Peter Schwartz, parentheses, futurist. From Wikipedia, Schwartz is best known as the primary and disgraced author of the 2004 Pentagon Climate Change Report that warned that European cities would be underwater and Britain would be a Siberian wasteland by the year 2020. Now, as you see, he is a futurist, which basically means he makes stuff up. He has appointed himself, or been appointed. He has been vested with the ability to see into the future and manipulate humanity in the method by which he sees fit. Of course, apparently to be a futurist, to have this job, your predictions don't necessarily have to be correct or even grounded in reality, as we see with his absolutely outrageous and ridiculous Pentagon climate change paper. That's what he's best known for. Interestingly, I copied this page, downloaded this PDF from Wikipedia 2 days ago. Since then, this has been changed. This is no longer in his bio. It says other stuff. But I thought that was very interesting. So if you go to Wikipedia now, you will not see this page as it is yet. I downloaded it mere days ago. Personal history: Schwartz was born in 1946 to Clara and Benjamin Schwartz, Hungarian Jews. I don't know what the over-under is on that, but there you go. Of course, he worked for Royal Dutch Shell, yet another one of these absolutely massive corporations that is well known in being just absolutely running roughshod over anybody or anything that gets in the way of their profit motive, gets in the way of their profit gathering. Now, as we go on, we see he's written several books, once again, of fiction. He writes books of fiction and says that they are visions of the future, and when they turn out to be completely wrong, he goes ahead and writes a new book. He serves on the board of directors for the Long Now Foundation. He also serves in the boards of the Center for a New American Security. And I know that probably rings a bell in people's heads because it sounds an awful lot like that program for the New American Century, but this is the Center for the New American Security. So let's figure out what this is. Center SNAS. Speaking at the CNAS annual conference in June 2009, U.S. Central Command Commander General David Petraeus observed that, quote, CNAS has in a few years established itself as a true force in think tank and policy-making circles. So interesting, this is a private organization that has somehow really gained the power to dictate what the foreign policy and especially the war-making agenda of America is. It continues, quote, in the era of Obama, the Center for a New American Security may emerge as Washington's go-to think tank on military affairs. This is the organization that the people in charge go to figure out what they should do. Among the organization's top donors include Northrop Grumman Aerospace Systems, Open Society Foundation, that's the George Soros organization, Airbus Group, the Boeing Company, Chevron Company, Lockheed Martin Corporation, Raytheon Company, and the Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office, the United States government, BAE Systems, BP America, and Exxon Mobil Corporation. So in case you are curious about why we're in quagmires in the Middle East, in case you're curious about why the foreign policy of the United States seems to be to keep us forever marred in pointless, worthless wars, it's because the people advising the people in charge are funded primarily by weapons manufacturers and oil companies, and that's what we see enumerated here. And yet we continue. Before joining CNAS, John Nagel served as an active duty officer in both the First Gulf War and Operation Iraqi Freedom. He then was part of the team that wrote FM 324, the Army's counterinsurgency field manual that transformed the way the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were conducted. This is possibly one of the most important things you have probably never heard about, so let's dive in. This is the text of FM 324. You can download this. It was distributed in May 2013. This is the manual that changed the way we engage in warfare, in which it changed the goal of warfare from achieving a goal and then getting your troops out to forever remaining within the countries that you are invading. This FM 324, the Insurgencies and Counterinsurgencies Handbook, is what set the stage for endless warfare, and it's incredibly important to pay attention to. So this guy that runs CNAS is the one, or founded CNAS, this is the one who wrote or helped perform the manual, the operational textbook that kept us in war forever, or as this article from smallwarsjournal.com says, they say this essay will argue that the overseas coin approach, which is counterinsurgency approach, codified in FM 324, has proven itself seriously flawed and must be fundamentally reconsidered. Whether we like it or not, our experience indicates. Sorry, I got distracted. Our experience indicates that deploying U.S. combat units to preserve the power of a foreign government against domestic insurgents is a fool's errand. Or as this essay puts it, which is a fantastic essay, I'll link all of this on the show notes on offlimits.news/blog, I believe. This article is called, you can see we're 280 pages in where I begin this quote, but it's entitled Counterinsurgency as Ideology. And this lays out beautifully exactly how from Vietnam all the way up to the present day, how our war-making capabilities, our war-making priorities have been shifted into the realm of the insane, the impossible, essentially. This article says, quote, within the U.S. defense establishment, a clash ensued between proponents for a new counterinsurgency strategy, often called coindinistas, and traditionalists who wanted to stick to a conventional approach to warfare. Given the situation in Iraq, this was not a theoretical discussion anymore as it had been since Vietnam. It was instead decisive for the war in Iraq. For the U.S. government, the first impetus to listen to experts was because of fears losing both the shooting war and the war of ideas. A simple withdrawal would have been political suicide, as it would have indicated defeat on a military level as well as on an ideological one. From an organizational perspective, the experts' knowledge was neither seen as instrumental to be implemented as a major doctrinal approach or operational plan, nor was it meant to allocate the necessary resources that would have allowed real pacification and political conciliation in the long run, e.g., by stationing U.S. troops long term. Thus, the work of the coindinistas was neither apolitical nor benevolent. Ultimately, it was another way of projecting U.S. power that was more sellable to the U.S. domestic population as well as political decision makers. The symbolic implementation of coin knowledge into the campaign would allow a quicker, cheaper exit from the war by promoting a story of successful pacification. Now, I understand it may seem like we are a little bit off the mark. We're a little bit off of center. We've steered away from our original trajectory, which is, of course, talking about this Rockefeller Foundation story. But this is important. I'm setting the groundwork. I'm setting the backstage. You have to know who is putting this together. So the person putting this together, the person in charge of this was, of course, Peter Schwartz, who is on the board of and a part of this organization, CNAS, which was the primary impetus, the primary driver of this insurgency and counterinsurgencies, which really laid the groundwork, which was the philosophical underpinning that has allowed endless warfare. Previously, you had warfare. You'd go to war. You'd defeat an enemy. You would come home, or preferably, you would never go anywhere. You would just defeat an invading enemy. This organization and this white paper is the thing that gave the legitimacy and the decision-making capability to say we're going to stay there forever. And I encourage you to do further research into that. But again, we're just sort of setting the stage for who this guy is and the things that he's involved in. Of course, he's also a member of the World Economic Forum in Davos, which everybody should be aware of. Another thing like Bilderberg, which is another one of these big organizational conferences where all the world leaders get on the same page as they continue to try to oppress and dominate the regular people of the world. Schwartz is also a member of the Berggrunds Institute, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, but I just don't care. He's part of their 21st Century Council, so we need to delve into this as well, the Bergen Institute. And so it was founded in 2010 by Nicholas Bergen, usually formerly known as the Bergen Institute on Governance. I did have that's something highlighted here, but I suppose it's not very important. Essentially, they're made up of different councils that get together, and here's what they do. They come up with the design and implementation of new ideas of good governance relevant to the common challenges of globalization in the 21st century. This is primarily done through three projects: the 21st Century Council, the Council for the Future of Europe, and the Think Long Committee for California. So the 21st Century Council is what our friend Peter Schwartz is a member of. And if we go here, we see the annual meeting of the 21st Century Council by the Berggrunds Institute. Here you see a very sad-looking Gordon. And we can go down here. This is where they met. Of course, one of their primary speakers is Henry Kissinger. And Fareed Zakar, whatever that guy's name is. Defining the anti-globalization backlash. So again, this is what they're concerned with. These are literally globalization organs. These are globalization committees. These are people that get together and try to figure out how to increase globalization. So when you talk about globalists in the media, you talk about globalists running the world, this is them. This is the people. And again, I apologize. Something is messed up on my Adobe, and I had a bunch of stuff highlighted on this. Hopefully that's not the case for the other things, but I'll go ahead and read this. Rethinking globalization must start early. Must start by clearly defining the reasons caused the so-called anti-globalization backlash. The backlash is not just about the international trade and economic relations, but about a range of issues from immigration to cultural resentment of liberal elites to the growing inequality and insecurity introduced by digital capitalism. All these factors emerge into a general anxiety that, in Western democracies, abetted by the truths and untruths of social media, has translated into distrust of public institutions and the collapse of the mainstream political parties. Nationalist, nativist, and populist movements are, in effect, a revolt against the swell of seemingly anonymous global forces that have put the average citizen's interest last behind bailed-out banks, asylum seekers, immigrants, corporate profits, or the activist agenda of post-traditional gender politics. As a result, faith that the status quo can deliver a better life for ordinary people and their children has been fatally undermined because it's not true, and it never has been true. In the end, it is this sense of loss of control over one's destiny at the hands of others that is the root of the backlash. Identity politics is an effort to, quote, take back control, to create a safe and familiar space for you and your kind in a world of tumult fomented by strangers. So you understand, they perfectly understand and they perfectly comprehend the backlash. This is not bewildering to them. It's not, surprising to them even. They understand. They're trying to take things over. They're making everybody's lives worse, and there's a backlash to this. Now, their response to this is not to say, maybe they're right. Maybe, all this globalization that we're pushing really has decreased people's wages. It really has made people's lives worse. No. Their whole thing is we need to overcome this natural reflex. We need to push through the resistance of the regular people to us, the high elites' plans and machinations. Populism, East and West. Significantly, populism of the sort seen in West has not emerged in East Asia for several reasons. I don't know. See, I'm telling you, I highlighted stuff, and it's gone now, so I might just have to skip over the rest of this. Darn it, I don't remember what was important and not. There's a lot of stuff we have to go through, but I suppose that's... Here you go, immigration and control of borders. Some have said mass migration is the cost associated with globalization that has disrupted local economies around the world and drawn asylum seekers to the West in order to escape poverty and war. In that context, the present immigration and asylum crisis, a touchstone for the nativist wave of populism, which they despise and hate. They say, this wave of populism and nativism has been caused by what they did, which was the open borders and mass migration. So again, they recognize completely why the pushback is happening. They recognize why people don't like the things that they're doing. They're not interested in trying to do things better or trying to listen to the people. They're very interested in trying to prevent people from stopping them. That's what they're interested in. And this is why I need to bring this up. So this paper that we're looking at right here came out in 2017 and was their response to the Donald Trump election. Again, coming out and saying, how do we put a lid on this thing? We've awoken a beast. How do we put the beast back to sleep again? That's what they're concerned about. So again, we've gone a little bit off the rails, I suppose you could say, but this was the white paper, the meeting notes of the organization that Peter Schwartz, the author of this document, is a part of. So this is all comprehensive in understanding the holistic situation that we're dealing with, that these are globalist organizations that get together to coordinate their domination of regular people who, after these globalists overplayed their hands, are now rising up in revolt. And since 2016, they all got together and go, guys, we need to figure out how to clamp this down, how to put a stop to them preventing us from carrying out our devious plans. Now, he started Global Business Network, which was the organization that really put on this study that we'll get into in a second. But he left there to work at Salesforce.com. And we're going to go down another little rabbit trail here as we investigate Salesforce.com. I'm sure you've heard of Salesforce, even if you aren't entirely familiar with exactly what it is. What is Salesforce? Salesforce is a cloud computing service as a software company that specializes in customer relationship management. Salesforce's service allows businesses to use cloud technology to better connect with customers. So it's a tracking technology. It's also one of the driving forces that has stopped software from being able to be purchased. Now, if you want Adobe and Photoshop and Premiere Pro and all these sorts of things, you can't just buy it and then own it. You are renting it on a monthly basis by them. It's about putting you sort of in a form of serfdom where you're constantly having to pay, out of pocket moment by moment rather than being able to just purchase something and then own it outright. That's what Salesforce was really behind. Now, it was founded by this gentleman named Mark Benioff, and we'll get to him in just a moment. But first, we'll just talk about exactly what Salesforce does and who it is. As of 2017, Salesforce reportedly had 150,000 companies using their software, including Amazon, GetReport, Adidas, ADP, ADP, American Express, and many, many more. Companies use Salesforce to understand their customers, to connect with them on a variety of levels, and help them grow their customer base. The cloud-based software allows companies to track in real-time analytics, customer success and support, customer complaints, and a variety of other CRM functions with the ease of cloud storage and access wherever the users are. It's a tracking, manipulation, and data analytics company that's used by the most evil companies in the world, Amazon, American Express, and ADP among them. This is the company that Peter Schwartz now works for. It was founded by Mark Benioff. Mark Benioff is a multi-billionaire with $7 billion to his name. That's a face you can trust right there. Don't you? Whoa, what the hell did I just do? I'm too excited. Calm down, Harrison. What did I hit? Rotate clockwise. All right, now we're upside down, which is an improvement. Okay, and we're moving one more. Look at that face. Can't you trust that face? Isn't that a face you would trust with all of your data and all of the data in America? He's a billionaire. He's a distant cousin of showrunner, television producer David Benioff, who you might recognize as the one half of D&D, the people that destroyed and utterly botched the ending of Game of Thrones, and then was immediately given a Star Wars trilogy to botch and destroy. I don't think he's doing that Star Wars trilogy anymore, but This is the world that they inhabit. I don't inhabit this world. These people inhabit this world where one cousin just runs all of the data acquisition for Amazon and ADP and is a multi-billionaire, where, I am a writer and a producer who can just absolutely abolish a fan base, can absolutely destroy the most popular show in a generation, and then be immediately handed the most important and powerful intellectual property in the history of mankind, Star Wars. Their failures are not failures. Their successes are not apparent. This is a world that is fake, fabricated, and manipulated by their particular networks. What do I mean? Well, this guy is the son of Barbara and Stephen Friedman, who is a former head of Goldman Sachs. So again, this is the world they inhabit. This is their this is normal to them, right? That you would be the son of the president of Goldman Sachs, that you would have a high-paying, incredibly powerful job in Hollywood just waiting for you, and meanwhile, your cousin is running as a multi-billionaire who is running all the data acquisition for some of the biggest companies in the entire world. Not to mention also owning Time magazine, the storied, the legendary, the once influential and important Time magazine, which was bought by Mark and his wife Lynn in 2018, and since then we have seen the way Time magazine has changed its coverage to be utterly political and factually worthless. So yeah, that's who this guy is. And we'll continue as we continue to talk about this fancy word, philanthropy. There's two types of words they use. There's charity and there's philanthropy. There is a difference. Charity really is just beneficial for anybody that receives it. It's a gift without any strings attached. It's when one person feels that they have enough and want to give back, they just give back, no strings attached. Philanthropy is charity on a large scale. It's industrial charity. And the reason they love this word is because you can do a lot with industrial charity. You can do a lot of manipulation and a lot of control under the guise of helping everyone, under the guise of being a humanist or whatever they call themselves, when in reality what they're doing is paving the way for globalism and total control. So again, how does this relate to the document that we will be covering that we haven't even gotten to yet? Well, this guy is the guy that founded the company that Peter Schwartz now works for. So they're all in this together. This is the priest class. This is the class of people above everybody else that has never had to worry about anything, controls everything, and pats themselves on the back for doing it. Benioff and his wife Lynn have been recognized as top philanthropists. They're just such great people, right? I mean, they gave a $100 million gift to the UCSF Children's Hospital. They gave another $100 million to the Oakland Children's Hospital. I mean, absolutely incredible. How can you argue with that, right? Let's take a look at what that hospital is doing with some of their money. Immediately after this massive, wonderful gift from Benioff, you have the first U.S. study of transgender youth funded by the NIH. So he was able to give money to a hospital so that they could hire people in order to get the National Institute of Health to give them money. So, they don't just use the money they get. They actually use the money they get in order to steal the money from U.S. taxpayers in order to chop little boys' penises off and shove little girls full of sex hormones. Pioneering UCSF clinic helps transgender youth be themselves. So again, this is immediately following that $100 million donation by the Benioffs. And again, I point this out to point out what they use philanthropy for. It's like, what? You're going to argue against him giving money to a children's hospital? Well, he's not just giving money to a children's hospital. He's giving money to the children's hospital that is the primary driver of transgenderism in little children. So this is the way they manipulate. This is the way they exercise control and then pat themselves on the back and call themselves philanthropists for doing it. Let's see what other wonderful philanthropic charitable activities this gentleman has been involved in. Benioff announced Salesforce would cancel all employee programs and travel in the state of Indiana after the passing of SB 101, the Religious Freedoms Restoration Act. He also did a similar move. Oh, and he got them to cancel that, right? This was a thing in Indiana where they said, look, we can't police people's thoughts. If they don't want to hire a gay person, they don't have to, if you don't want to hire somebody you don't like, you don't have to hire them. And if you don't like them for whatever reason, that's your prerogative. You don't have to hire somebody you don't like. That's just the way it is. Not if Mark Benioff has anything to say about it. Of course, he doesn't live in Indiana. No should have no say in how the people of Indiana comport themselves and govern themselves, but he's going to come in with his massive multi-billion-dollar pockets and corporate control and force them to do exactly what he wants to do because he knows better than them, because he's the philanthropist and he's making the world a better place. So he did the same thing with Georgia, basically saying, look, if you pass this First Amendment Defense Act, we will remove everything we do from Georgia. A month later, the governor vetoed the bill. Again, this is philanthropy to these people. This is good to them. They're making the world a better place when they do things like go to a faraway state that they don't live in and force those people, through the power they exert with their corporate money and corporate control, to do things that the people of that country or that state would rather not do. This is evil incarnate. This is disgusting, right? This should, anybody, if you live in Georgia, you have a say in Georgia. If you're some jackass billionaire who lives in a compound in Hawaii, but you're in charge of this big company, so you're going to use that power to destroy the people or the will of the people in that state. It's the same methodology, it's the same mindset as Harvey Weinstein or Jeffrey Epstein, any of these people. It's like, look, I have the power. It's nothing. I'm not doing anything aggressive. I'm looking out for the poor, beleaguered LGBT people. I'm a hero when I come in and use my massive corporate power and my just incredible influence that I've gained through my contracts with Amazon and Lockheed Martin in order to force people to do as I want. And of course, he's donating $1 million to the March for Our Lives, which was the gun control march head by the actors from the Parkland School. So, again, it's important because as we go through this document, we're going to hear about philanthropy. We're going to hear about philanthropies and philanthropic endeavors. What they do with these are destroy your rights. What they do with these are cancel the First Amendment Defense Act, right? Cancel the Religious Freedom Restoration Act and fund the propaganda march in order to take your guns away from you. But this is all couched under philanthropy, and they consider themselves good people for doing this. Bernioff criticized other technology industry executives for hoarding their money in October 2018 interview with The Guardian. So yes, literally the multi-billionaire in his compound in Hawaii is going to be praised for telling other billionaires not to hoard their wealth. This is the level of hypocrisy, the level of indulgence that is shown to these people in the media and in the modern world. So once again, we get back to where we began, which is with Peter Schwartz. And again, the reason I went into Mark Benioff is because he's the one that runs Salesforce, which is where Peter Schwartz works, who was the author of this 2010 program that we're about to get into. So it's important about laying the groundwork. It's important about exposing the networks and the ways in which they behave, the ways in which they work, the ways in which they leverage their money and take over organizations and pressure governments. This is all together, right? Mark Benioff is exactly the type of person that this white paper is written for. Once again, I remind you, as we actually get back to it, this white paper is titled "The Scenarios for the Future Development and Future of Technology and International Development," put out by the Rockefeller Foundation, carried out by the Global Business Network, of which Peter Schwartz was the president until he started working for Salesforce. So what is this white paper? Well, it has 4 scenarios laid out. And so what this is called is scenario planning. So again, as these globalist organizations want to get together and organize and get on the same page, they use what they call scenario planning in order to try to predict the future, in order to have in place mechanisms by which they can alter or get back to sort of that future that they envision. The Rockefeller Foundation's use of scenario planning to explore technology and international development has been both inspired and ambitious. Throughout my 40-year-plus career as a scenario planner, imagine that. 40-plus year as a scenario planner. His scenarios don't come true. His scenarios are wrong. But for 40 years, he's made a living making stuff up, making up bullshit alternate reality timelines for the future, and then is paid for 40 years to continue to do this. These people, they live in a fantasy world. He's never had to be right. He's never had to do anything correctly. He literally just makes stuff up, and all of the most powerful people in the world get behind him and then carry out his plans. He says, I've worked with the world's leading companies, governments, foundations, and nonprofits, and I know firsthand the power of the approach. Scenario planning is a powerful tool precisely because the future is unpredictable and shaped by many interacting variables. Scenarios enable us to think creatively and rigorously about the different ways these forces may interact, while forcing us to challenge our own assumptions about what we believe or hope the future to be. Scenarios embrace and weave together multiple perspectives and provide an ongoing framework for spotting and making sense of important changes as they emerge. Perhaps most importantly, scenarios give us a new shared language and deepens our conversation about the future and how we can help shape it. Help shape it with their philanthropy. They're just helping, folks. But that's a good sort of breakdown of exactly what scenarios are, and what we're going to be exploring here are 4 scenarios put forward in 2010 that sought to predict the future 15 to 20 years hence. So, we begin. The Rockefeller Foundation believes in order to understand the many ways in which technology will impact international development in the future, we must first broaden and deepen our individual and collective understanding of the range of possibilities. This report and the project upon which it is based is one attempt to do that. In it, we share the outputs and insights from a year-long project undertaken by the Rockefeller Foundation and Global Business Network designed to explore the role of technology in international development through scenario planning, a method in which GBN is a longtime leader. Once again, just sort of laying the groundwork, and they talk about why scenarios. Why use these scenarios? Importantly, scenarios are not predictions. Rather, they are thoughtful hypotheses which allow us to imagine and then to rehearse different strategies for how to be more prepared for the future, or more ambitiously, how to help better shape the future ourselves. That really sort of gives it away, doesn't it? It's not about being prepared for the future. It's about shaping the future. It's about dictating the future. It's about controlling, manipulating, and turning the future towards a method that would benefit them, right? You feel helped? I'm actually checking in on the thing. I will have a Twitter alt very shortly. I really went down from 42 to 7. Well, maybe I'm just boring. Maybe that's what happened. So, again, they ask why technology. They say the precise trajectory along which technological innovation will travel is highly uncertain. For example, will critical technology advances come from the developed world, or will innovators and their innovations be more geographically dispersed? To me, this is sort of an obvious answer because basically ever since the 1800s, more or less every single critical technology advance has come from the West, has come from America and Western Europe. So again, it's like when you look at this, you have to understand these people live in a fantasy world, and they predict things in a fantastical sort of way. What could possibly lead anyone to believe that all of a sudden a change would be made to where suddenly developing countries, third world, would suddenly be the driving engines of innovation? They never have been. They certainly never will be. I mean, it's like you're dealing with two houses, two families, one of which has already done a bunch, right? They've already invented a bunch of stuff and created a bunch of things and all this sort of stuff for decades and decades. They've done that, where the other one has adopted those technologies, as they can, but it's never really come up with anything. So it's like, are you expecting them to overtake them? Are you expecting them to catch up and then overtake? It doesn't make any sense. One family will sort of always be ahead, and the other family can be helped up to that side. But it's just another illustration of just how absurd the ground upon which this entire facade is built. So here's the focal question of this entire white paper. They say every scenario project has a focal question, a broad yet strategic query that serves as an anchor for the scenarios. For this project, the focal question was this, quote, how might how might technology affect barriers to building resilience and equitable growth in the developing world over the next 20 years? Now, equitable growth is the most important part there because, like I'm talking about with like two families, one that is very successful and innovative and is constantly creating and generating and maximizing their potentiality, and the other house is not doing that so much. Well, how do you create equitable growth between these two? You can do what you can to try to prop up the people that are behind, but they're already behind. They're staying behind. They're probably going to remain behind, even if they, every time one family creates technology and it's shipped over to the other one, they're still having to start back from zero and try to climb their way out of it. Equitable growth means shutting down the rapid growth people. That's the only way you can make it equal. It's the only way you can make it equitable, is if you clamp down on the people that are innovating and creating and allow the other people to have an equitable growth at that point. Because you can't. It's a pipe dream to think that you can somehow change these people that have never innovated much for decades and decades. And it's not like a. I'm not saying these people are a certain type of people are incapable of innovation and all this sort of stuff. It's just a matter of where our societies are, where our civilizations are at, the access we have to all this technology and all this sort of stuff. I want to see all humans flourish, and I don't think people. Well, you'll see as we get farther into it. Their idea is to basically control, manipulate, and establish their dominance over poor people in order to bring them up, rise them up, get them access to more technology. It's all about creating consumers and further expanding the consumer base so they can sell more product, so they can get more money, so they can fund more think tanks, so they can further take control and limit freedom. So, to me, it's about letting people be free, letting people progress at their own pace or not, whatever. It's like that's up to them, and we should share our bounties. Anything we develop, we should share with the world and see what they can do and see if they can outcompete. I like competition. I like head to head. I like I like just letting people be free and do what they can. And you want to help people, but you don't want people to be in a state of arrested development because of the help that you're giving them, right? All you have to do is look at the black community here in America and I did a big thing on this on the War Room when I was on there, where I showed this video of a guy who grew up in South Philly in the 1950s, and the way he was talking about his community and his schooling and education and discipline and all that, and it was like beautiful and brilliant and amazing. It sounded just like an idyllic existence in the 1950s for this black community, dirt poor black community in Philadelphia. But there, the discipline was there. He talks about how every single home, like something like 78% of the families had a father and a mother in the house raising their children. It was a strong family community and a community dynamic where everybody cared about education and religion and decency and all this sort of stuff. And that entire society, that, if you go to South Philly now, are you going to hear that same story? Are you going to hear somebody say, oh, education was the most important thing and discipline was very highly cared about? No, it's chaos and it's nonsense, because right around this time, around the 1960s, when all these people that had grown up in this amazing neighborhood sort of realized the inequalities that were being faced legally by these people, you had the government come in and say, we're going to help you. We're going to help you by giving you stuff. We need to get you to catch up, right? These are the two houses, right? You have one house that's maybe not as developed and as rich and as wealthy as the white American house is well established and fulfilled. The black American house has clearly been stunted for a long time, clearly has started way far back, but they've made massive strides. Their community is amazing. Their cohesion is incredible. Their lifestyles are going up and up and up and up and up. And right as this is happening, and they're overcoming this historical injustice that was slavery, that I hope everybody can recognize and appreciate, appreciate in the worst way possible. It's absolute travesty. And right as they're succeeding, right as they're doing well, right as they're going, hey, we don't need to be second-class citizens. We're doing great. Here comes the government with their help, saying, oh, we're going to help you catch up to these other people. We're going to help you get there. And of course, decades later, it's utter collapse. So, just to clarify, when I talk about some people being able to do really well or be succeeding, while other communities don't, I prefer the 1950s Philadelphia neighborhood to the 2020 Philadelphia neighborhood. And when you look at what's changed, it's that these people, these types of people, these philanthropists, these activists have come in, and in order to help the poor, innocent black people, they've destroyed black communities in America, and it's sickening. So anyway, hopefully that clarifies things a little bit. focusing on how to overcome a set of obstacles associated with the application of technology to the challenges of development, helped to both bound the inquiry and promote a problem-solving approach that seeks to identify potential systematic intervention opportunities. This is a very important section of this entire white paper. Systematic intervention opportunities. That's what they're looking for. You don't have to control everything if you control the choke points, right? I got kicked off Twitter. Now, the number of people who want me kicked off Twitter is probably fairly small. The things that matters is one of those people has the red button at Twitter. One of those people is sitting behind the right desk in order to delete me. That's the choke point. That's the systematic intervention opportunity, where all you have to have is that one person in that one office, and they can control massive numbers of people, never be unmasked. We aren't aware who they are. We aren't aware why they're doing what they're doing. But that's the systematic intervention opportunity, and that's what they're going to be looking for as this white paper continues. It also hopes our scenarios It is also our hope that these scenarios help to identify potential areas of future work for governments, philanthropies, corporations, and nonprofits, and that they illuminate choices and commitments that a wide range of organizations may want to make in these areas in the future. So yes, once again, this is the organizational paper. This is telling all of the philanthropies, all of the companies, all of the governmental workers, all of the nonprofit NGOs. This is helping them coordinate and get together and decide how they're going to be exercising their enormous power in the near future. The scenario framework. The Rockefeller Foundation and GBN began the scenario process by surfacing a host of driving forces that would affect the future of technology and international development. These forces were generated through both secondary research and in-depth interviews with foundation staff, foundation grantees, and external experts. So you can trust it, right? Next, all of these constituents came together in several exploratory workshops to further brainstorm the content of these forces, which could be divided into two categories. These are important categories: predetermined elements and critical uncertainties. A good starting point for any set of scenarios is to understand those driving forces that we can be reasonably certain will shape the world we are describing, also known as predetermined elements. For example, it is a near geopolitical certainty that with the rise of China, India, and other nations, a multipolar global system is emerging. One demographic certainty is that the global population growth will continue and will put pressure on energy, food, and water resources, especially those in the developing world. This is one of these sticking points, right? This is where we see the hubris of these people come out. That hubris and dishonesty, I guess you could say, because there's two aspects to this. One, they don't know what predetermined elements are or how they will be affected. If you were to go back to the 1950s and watch interviews of people like Margaret Sanger, people like Aldous Huxley, people who were aware of and involved in these same types of organizations that existed back then that exist still today, they were absolutely certain. It was a predetermined certainty that the world population was growing too fast and mass starvation would occur. That was what they considered a predetermined certainty, and they made policies based on that. Turned out to be utterly untrue. Now our population has quadrupled since then, has doubled their highest estimate, and a very, very small number of people are starving because there were technological advancements that allowed grain to be grown in all sorts of places. But this is the hubris that they have, that they say, we know certainly this will happen. But it's hubris tied in with a lie, right? Tied in with dishonesty, because these are the people who are in the Rockefeller Foundation, who attend these meetings. They're the ones who have allowed power to be drained away from America and be sent to China. And we'll see this appear over and over again. In fact, that's a part I skipped over when I was talking about CNAS and the way in which CNAS has also staked out terrain in studying the emergence of Asia as a center of global power, particularly with regards to China. One of the main stated goals of CNAS's Asia-Pacific Security Program is to, quote, devise a future path for America's engagement of China that can expand bilateral cooperation in areas of shared strategic interest and encourage increased accountability from the Chinese regime. All they care about is China. There's another, this one, the Brueggen Institute or whatever it's called. One of their main things is about bringing China up, but creating China. If you actually go to their website and go to the website for the annual meeting of the 21st Century Council, Xi Jinping, boom, right there, big and in the center. The literal dictator, communist despot of China. They love. I mean, one of their first meetings was with Xi Jinping, and they fawn all over him. It's sickening. All right. Predetermined elements are also important for determining to any scenario story. Predetermined elements are important to any scenario story, but they are not the foundation upon which these stories are built. Rather, scenarios are formed around critical uncertainties, driving forces that are considered both highly important to the focal issue and highly uncertain in terms of their future resolution, whereas predetermined elements are predictable driving forces. And again, they're predictable because these are the people causing the predetermined occurrences to happen, right? These are the multinationals that are offshoring their power to China. You know, it's like, I can't think, you know, it's like you're walking your dog and you let your dog poop on someone's lawn, and then you go to that person and you go, you know, there's poop all over your lawn. You need to clean it up. It's like, you're the one that put it there. You know, these are the corporations that are offshoring all of our stuff to China, and then they come and say, well, it's a certainty China's going to be the power. It's just the way it is. Like, you're the one that did it, jackass. So whereas predetermined elements are predictable driving forces, uncertainties are by their nature unpredictable. Their outcome can be guessed at but not known. So for this exercise in which they came up with 4 different scenarios in order to predict the future, they came up with 2 chosen uncertainties. They're introduced as follows, and together they define a set of 4 scenarios for the future of technology and international development that are divergent, challenging, internally consistent, and plausible. I have an issue with that term, plausible or internally consistent, and we'll see why. Each of the 2 uncertainties is expressed as an axis that represents a continuum of possibilities ranging between 2 endpoints. Here are the 2 axes: strong and weak, political and economic alignment, and adaptive capacity, which can be low and high. So let's define these 2 poles, or these 2 shades of gray. Global, political, and economic alignment. This uncertainty, this is one of the 2, refers to both the amount of economic integration, the flow of foods, capital, people, and ideas, as well as the extent to which enduring and effective political structures enable the world to deal with many of the global challenges it faces. On one end of the axis, we would see a more integrated global economy and high trade volumes, which enables access to a wider range of goods and services through imports and exports. And the increasing specialization of exports, we would also see more cooperation on the supranational level, things like TPP, fostering increased collaboration, strengthened global institutions, and the formation of effective international problem-solving networks. It's all couched in this feel-good, benefit for humanity kind of verbiage. It's globalism. That's what that means. That's what the economic and political global political and economic alignment means. It means globalism. It means how much can you decimate, destroy, and steal power from the nation state. That's what this means. At the other axis, so they say on one axis point, we should see more cooperation, increased collaboration. At the other axis point, the potential for economic development in the developing world would be reduced by the fragility of the overall global economy, coupled with the protectionism and fragmentation of trade, along with a weakening of governance regimes that raises barriers to cooperation, thereby hindering agreement on an implementation of large-scale interconnected solutions to pressing global challenges. Translation, they want globalism. That's all they want. And then the other uncertainty is adaptive capacity. Adaptive capacity is generally associated, and again, I'll read the whole thing, okay? This uncertainty refers to the capacity at different levels of society to cope with change and adapt effectively. This ability to adapt can mean proactively managing existing systems and structures to ensure their resilience against external forces, as well as the ability to transform those systems and structures when a changed context means they are no longer suitable. Adaptive capacity is generally associated with higher levels of education in a society, as well as the availability of outlets for those who have had educations to further their individual and societal well-beings. It's just the wordiness, the verbiage. It's like liars use a lot of words to tell lies. The truth is simple, okay? The truth is that this is the opposite of the truth, okay? High levels of adaptive capacity are typically achieved through the existence of trust in society, the presence of tolerance and novelty and diversity, the strength, variety, and overlap of human institutions, and the free flow of communication and ideas, right? So this just what this should do as you read these two, whatever they call them, the problems, the critical uncertainties, it gives you a real understanding of what their mindset is. And it's that globalism is an unalloyed good, and the more, and this is the absurd part, they literally think the more institutionally controlled the world is, the better it is. That's what they think. They don't just think it's better, they think that those institutions are actually more capable of dealing with change than a smaller, decentralized institution would be, which is absurd on its face, right? It's just pure logic. If you have a small organization with not a lot of members, not a lot of bureaucracy in between the levels, not a lot of commitments with outside institutions, if something comes along, that institution is going to be great at changing. That institution is going to be small and malleable and flexible enough to take on challenges. A large, entrenched, bureaucratic institution are terrible at dealing with change and issues and challenges. So it just gives you their mindset where they just, it's an axiomatic certainty to them that the more controlled and institutionalized your government is, the better it is. And actually, they say the more adaptive capacity they have. It's the opposite of the truth. The more, and you know, you just have to look back to the quote from the interview with Mike Wallace and Aldous Huxley, where Mike Wallace asks him, what do you think the biggest challenge of the future will be? And his answer is over-organization. He says we're in extreme danger of basically the human race being over-organized, being controlled to such a great extent by these institutions and governmental, non-governmental, all of these sorts of things. Over-organization is the big issue because it dehumanizes the people that are involved in the institution. But this is all just the preamble, folks. I told you this was going to be long. Don't say I didn't warn you. I told you this was going to be long. I'll try to go a little bit faster. But now we're here at the meat and potatoes. How you guys doing, my boy? My boys. He says my boy has energy. You're damn right. This program has been brought to you by Dr. Pepper and the InfoWars store. Okay, this is the main course, fellas. These are the 4 scenarios, the 4 fantasy and fevered imaginings of the globalist Peter Schwartz. These are the 4 scenarios we'll be reading through. The first is called Lockstep, a world of tighter, top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. And as you can see here, we have a set of a pair of axes that cross over, kind of like the political chart, where you have on one side strong political and economic alignment, on the other side weak. Left and right, you have adaptive capacity, low to high. So lockstep is strong globalism, right? We're going to translate this from political and economic alignment to globalism. High globalism, but low institutional control. They call that lockstep. Clever together, a world in which highly coordinated and successful strategies emerge for addressing both urgent and entrenched worldwide issues. Clearly the favorite, right? Clearly this is the favorite, is clever together, is high globalism and high institutional control of society. And it's clear this is what they want. This is what they approve of. This is what they desire, is clever together. And they're not subtle about it, right? It's like, that's what they want. It's all these hands, these different colored hands holding up the globe. It's like, you know, it's like, well, do you want to go down street A and it's, you know, flowers and butterflies and trees, or do you want to go down street B, which is just a swamp and moors and crocodiles? It's like, which one do they want me to go down? I wonder. So then if you have weak of both of these, which is low globalism, low institutional control, you have hack attack, an economically unstable and shock-prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. Ooh, dangerous innovations. And again, just put yourself in the mindset. To them, dangerous innovations are innovations that challenge them. They're innovations that prevent their control of the world. It's not, I'm not being hyperbolic here. They want to control the world, and this is the paper that's helping them do that. And again, these types of papers, these types of organizations, these types of central planning documents have been around for centuries. And they've really been codified and actualized for decades. For 100 years. People in power have gotten together, situations like this, and have planned how to control and deal with situations where the people might not appreciate being dominated, and they figure out how to overcome that. And then finally, with our last scenario, we have smart scramble, an economically depressed world in which individuals and communities develop localized, makeshift solutions for a growing set of problems. So they love centralization. They love centralization. They love control. They despise people acting for themselves, with themselves, on their own behalf. They hate that. So those are the 4 scenarios. And again, I highlight this 15 to 20 years because, again, this was written in 2010 and it's supposed to predict the world from 2010 till about 2030. So we're about halfway through that. So this is where you go and you check their guesses, you read through their proposed scenarios, and you take it in. You go, well, we're 10 years in now. How accurate are they? And which path are we going to go down? Now, before we get into the scenarios themselves, I'd like to change their names, right? Clever Together is Plan A. Lockstep is Plan B. Hack Attacks Plan C. Smart Scramble is probably Plan D. That's the way these people see it. Clever Together is what they want. It's what they desire. As we read through it, you'll see they're enumerating this is the perfect world for them, for their control. This is the world in which people willingly give in to their globalist designs. Lockstep is the plan B, where if something were to happen, like, I don't know, Donald Trump gets elected president all of a sudden and Brexit occurs and the people, the populist, nativist, powerful blocks of humanity within these countries rise up and revolt against their attempts to indoctrinate us and suck us into their machinations. If that fails, then they go to Lockstep, and that's Plan B. So I want to label those accurately as we look into it, and we'll take this highfalutin bullshit here. We now invite you to immerse yourself in each future world and consider 4 different visions of the evolution of technology and international development to 2030. Immerse yourself. Let yourself be taken away on this wonderful journey by Peter Schwartz into his fevered authoritarian mind. Scenarios number 1, which again I refer to as Scenario B. And this was the paragraph that made me do this entire video in the first place. Pay attention, folks. In 2012, again, this was written in 2010, okay? So they're projecting. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain, originating from wild geese, was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population and killing 8 million in just 7 months, the majority of them young, healthy adults. The pandemic also had a deadly effect on economies. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. The pandemic blanketed the planet, though disproportionate numbers died in Africa, Southeast Asia, and Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire in the absence of official containment protocols. See, if you don't listen to the government, you die. That's their mindset. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. The United States' initial policy of, quote, strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus not just within the United States, but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better, China in particular. The Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus far earlier than in other countries and enabling a swifter post-pandemic recovery. Isn't that uncanny? Isn't this incredible that in 2010 they were predicting that this exact thing would happen? I mean, sure, you can go back to Event 201, which is where they told all of these people, all of these global the world controllers, as Aldous Huxley would put it, when they were telling them, here's the Event 201, here's how we're going to handle this outbreak that is about to occur, that we don't know about and aren't predicting, but here's how it's going to go down exactly. Well, 9 years before, this came out, where they'd already had this plan. They knew exactly how this would go. And again, this is plan B for them. And we'll see as we go on to the next scenario. You'll see a very, idealistic, everybody just gives in to us and we all come together under our totalitarian control and everything's great. But this is like, okay, we got to clamp down because something happened that plan A didn't work. So what we're seeing now in our lives is plan B being carried out. It continues, China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. So they're telling you what they're going to do. These mandatory restrictions are going to intensify and continue. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. In order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics and transnational terrorism to environmental crises and rising poverty, leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. You can almost hear them salivating as they say it. At first, this notion of a more controlled world gained wide acceptance and approval. See, they're telling these people in charge, look, if you put humanity in this awful crisis and you force them into a pandemic mindset, then they will willingly accept the control that you want to exercise over them. That's the trend. That's what they're telling the people who are reading this that are in charge 10 years ago. Citizens willingly gave up some of their sovereignty and their privacy to more paternalistic states in exchange for greater safety and stability. Again, they love this. Citizens were more tolerant and even eager for top-down direction and oversight, and national leaders had more latitude to impose order in the ways they saw fit. In developed countries, this heightened oversight took many forms: biometric IDs for all citizens, for example, and tighter regulation of key industries whose stability was deemed vital to national interests. In many developed countries, enforced cooperation with a suite of new regulations and agreements slowly but steadily restored both order and, more importantly, economic growth. They probably meant more importantly, right? Because that's what they care about is economic growth, right? Because they're just such philanthropists. But, pay attention. So, they're basically saying, in this timeline that we're imagining, it's a fever dream. It's not a prediction, though. Definitely not a prediction. This pandemic will start spreading. It'll be really bad. And then the people will beg for our control. And through our enforcing of things like biometric identification and scanning, body scans at the border, it's through these regulations and restrictions that slowly but steadily order and economic growth are restored. It's undeniably, in this scenario, they're considering these increased power grabs good because it brings back order and growth, right? And this is a great quote here. It says, "It is possible to discipline and control some societies for some time." I want to stop there for a moment because these people are not your parents. This man is not the principal of my elementary school. He does not get to discipline me. He does not get to control my society. But to him, he's just like, it's possible. Sure, it's possible. But look, you can't do it. You can't do the whole world all the time, right? We'd love to discipline and control and exercise our petty domination over those weaker and poorer than us. We'd love to do that, but it's just too hard. There's too many. And of course, once again, I go back to Aldous Huxley, who knew all of this because all of these plans were in place during his lifetime, and he was perfectly aware of them because his brother and his father were intimately involved with the people that were putting them in place. So he knew all of this was coming on, and he said, you can do everything with your spears except sit on them. And he said, and let's see if I can get this quote right, he said, the people will find, the people in power will find that you have to have people willing to be slaves. You have to have them willingly give up their stuff because you can't just do them. It's not the 1984 boot on your face style where you're forcing people through violence and state application of violence to submit. the only sustainable method of complete control is to have the people themselves willingly be involved with it. So that's what they're saying here. That's what these people are telling their friends. They're saying, look, we know it's possible to control some people some of the time, but if we want to take over the whole world, we've got to get them to beg for it. That's what they want. They think they can become gods. What a brilliant way to put it. And that's exactly what they think. Reading some of the chat here. Okay, all right. I think some of my highlights may have disappeared, but we're skipping ahead just a little bit. So we'll skip down to here. They have these headlines that they predict. It's a fantasy. It's a silly, goofy fantasy of these people that don't know any better than you or I. Despite all of their fancy qualifications, despite all of their billions of dollars, they are fantasizing about what they think the world would be like, and they're retarded. It's just stupid, right? Italy addresses immigrant caregiver gap with robots. They're literally projecting in this white paper that Italy will be so desperate for migrants, and there won't be any. They'll have to go to robots. So, will Africa's embrace of authoritarian capitalism a la China continue? Do these people really think Africa and China have anything in common except that they're both being dominated by the Chinese Communist Party? It's absurd. Role of philanthropy in lockstep. And again, this is sort of the point of this entire process, right? These are the marching orders that they're sending out. They're saying, in the future, if this seems like the road we're going down, which it does, this is what you need to do. That's what they're telling the readers of this. They're saying you and your philanthropic involvement in the charities that you run and the activism that you're involved in, here's what you need to do. He says they'll face hard choices in this world. Given the strong role of governments, doing philanthropy will require heightened diplomacy skills and the ability to operate effectively in extremely divergent environments. Philanthropy, grantee, and civil society relationships will be strongly moderated by government, and some foundations might choose to align themselves more closely with national official development assistance strategies and government objectives. Larger philanthropies will retain an outsized share of influence, and many smaller philanthropies may find value in merging financial, human, and operational resources. Philanthropic organizations interested in promoting universal rights and freedoms, like chopping your kid's dick off and it being illegal to say you don't like gay people, that's what they see as human rights, right? It's your human right to shut up and do as we tell you. Look at blocked at many nations' borders. See, borders are just such an issue for them. Borders are such a problem for them. They need to destroy them somehow, right? And then they talk about how technology will be used. And again, this is just, it's just incredible. Scanners using advanced functional magnetic resonance imaging technology became the norm at airports and other public areas to detect abnormal behavior that may indicate antisocial intent. And it's like, this is a Alex Jonesian, this is an InfoWars level assertion that the rulers of the world would use magnetic resonance imaging to scan you at airports and shopping malls in order to detect abnormal behavior and indicate antisocial intent. But these are the people in charge. These are the people that are doing it. These are the people that would implement this type of thing. And here they're telling you this would become normal if we have to go to Plan B. All right, and again, so then they have this life in lockstep where they tell this made-up story about some Indian woman. And so listen to this. So again, what they describe it as lockstep, and they say top-down control. It'll be authoritarian. It'll be, freedom will be destroyed. There will be no all this sort of stuff. They sound like, for the layman, what they're describing, you would think, oh, these people don't want this. They don't want lockstep, right? They don't want the world in complete control in the way that they're describing. But the story that they tell is like, look how great it is. She says, many lives in her home city of Jaipur have been saved by the government's quarantines during the pandemic. And that experience, thought Manisha, had given the government the confidence to be so strict about river usage now. How else could they get millions of Indian citizens to completely shift their cultural practices in relationship to a holy site? That's what these people salivate for, right? These people in India, they have a religious impetus. They have a doctrine that tells them to do something. And it's like, these people sit around, they go, how do we destroy that? How do we overcome that? How can we force these people to obey us? And it's like, well, if you were just to release a pathogen and then have the government be the savior, right? What does it say? It says, her home city of Jaipur had been saved by the government's quarantines. Therefore, when the government came in to tell them to stop being the religion that they are, they trusted the government because they just saved so many people because of the big, pathogen that was running over the world that they totally aren't predicting at all. These aren't predictions, by the way. These are not predictions. These are just wild-eyed dreams. Yeah, right. The water looked so much cleaner now, and recent tests suggested it might even meet drinkability standards by 2035. So again, this is their fantasy. This is their fever dream, wet dream, basically. Is like, oh man, if we just had all this control, if there was only a pathogen, a plague that would sweep the planet, that would allow us to bring in the government as saviors and implement all of these horrible totalitarian, authoritarian, technologically driven control mechanisms, then we'll clean up the rivers, right? Then we'll make everything better for everyone. Ignore their human rights, their actual human rights, right? The ability to worship freely, the ability to take advantage of God's bounty here on earth. No, that's not important. What's important is these motherfuckers have control over them. And now we've arrived at Clever Together, the globalist homeworld, the globalist vision of heaven in Clever Together, right? A world in which highly coordinated and successful strategies emerge for addressing both urgent and entrenched worldwide issues. Oh, if they just give us total control, if we could just have institutional power beyond any government or any system of accountability to the regular people, if only we could get away from nation states and have a supranational committee of controllers, only then could we have highly coordinated and successful strategies for addressing both urgent and entrenched worldwide issues. They say undeniably the planet's climate was becoming increasingly unstable. And this I point out because of the absurdity. And these people, these are the billionaires, these are the ones running everything, these are the ones in the organizations that are telling our military what to do and running our corporations and advising on the NGOs. These are these people. And this is how dumb and inaccurate their predictions are. He says, undeniably, the planet's climate was becoming increasingly unstable. Sea levels were rising fast, even as countries continued to build out coastal megacities. In 2014, the Hudson River overflowed into New York during a storm surge, turning the World Trade Center site into a 3-foot deep lake. The image of motorboats navigating through lower Manhattan jarred the world's most powerful nations into realizing that climate change was not just a developing world problem. Never happened, not a problem, not an issue. These people are dumb, inaccurate, and I'm not going to say retarded, but they are. But when I first saw this document, I just flipped open to a random page. I didn't even know what the document was yet. Somebody had sent it to me, and this was the first thing I went to, and I was like, in 2014, the Hudson River overflowed, and there were motorboats navigating lower Manhattan. I don't remember this. And I went and looked it up and I was like, this never happened. What is this? I didn't realize it was a projection into the future from 2010, but that just shows you. I mean, that just shows you how inaccurate and stupid these people are. But they're the ones who will decide everything. And if only we could just give all the power to them, then they would make the world a better place. In such an interconnected world, where the behaviors of one country, company, or individuals had potentially high impact effect on all others. See, it's all about the society, and this is where the communism comes in, right? Where the behaviors of one country, company, or individual had potentially high impact effect on all others. This is I always think back to, we did the interview with Alex Jones and Ted Nugent, and he kept doing this impression where he'd go, the society, it's all about the society and the community living together. And it's like, yeah, I just thought it was funny, but it always comes back. It's like, you're not an individual who's responsible for your own well-being and your own actions. And yeah, it's right that you should consider others, but that's a personal responsibility of yours. But in this, it's like, no. The society gets to determine what you do because you have such an effect on everybody else. See, you are not you. You are just a cog in this society, and your responsibility is not to yourself or your own soul or your God. It's to the society. It's to everybody else. And this is, again, Brave New World. If you've never read Brave New World, that is the world they are building up, right? You remember that it was weird if you didn't have, multiple sexual partners in a single day, right? It was like, oh, can we trust him? He has friends that he's really close to. Really, you shouldn't be close to your one friend. You shouldn't have a single lover or wife and get married. You have to be equally accessible and open to and friends with everyone, because you are the society. The society is you. Orgy, porgy, orgy, porgy. This is the playbook. Piecemeal attempts by one nation here, one small collective of environmental organizations there, would not be enough to stave off a climate disaster, or for that matter, to effectively address a host of other planetary scale problems. But highly coordinated worldwide strategies for addressing such urgent issues just might. What was needed was systems thinking and systems acting on a global scale. That's what they want. This is what they're going for. This is their ultimate goal. This was the plan A that got a wrench thrown in the works when Donald Trump got elected and the populist uprising swept over the earth, and suddenly globalist, the term, was suddenly found on the mainstream media. Suddenly the term deep state did not seem like such a wild conspiracy theory anymore, because these people were exposed, and we saw that they have now reverted to plan A, or plan B rather, which was releasing a pathogen and forcing people to give over their rights. This is plan A. This is what they wanted. This is their wet dream that they're imagining. Everybody just understands. We all just need to get together to save the world from ourselves. In 2017, an international agreement was reached on carbon sequestration, which by then most multinational corporations had a chief carbon officer. Again, this is their fantasy. They think every corporation should have a chief carbon officer, right? Again, this is the absurd. This is how incapable of actually addressing real world problems they are. You can have let's say every corporation has a carbon officer. What the fuck is that going to do? What is that? Who is that going to help? What are they doing? They're measuring carbon. Like, it's stupid. Things need to be handled on a decentralized basis. If a company or a country or an organization is going into the Amazon and destroying their trees and chopping down 10,000-year-old trees and eliminating, unique animals that haven't even been scientifically documented yet, then you stop them from doing that, right? They could actually be carbon zero while they're doing this. It's not about carbon. It's about, it's about individual things. It's about things that different companies are doing, destruction they're causing, abuse they're perpetuating that need to be stopped, and that's all. But they're not interested in that. They're interested in carbon officers. Okay. There's so much more to this. Companies, NGOs, and governments, often acting together, launched pilot programs and learning labs to figure out how to best meet the needs of particular communities, increasing the knowledge base of what worked and what didn't. Again, let me break down exactly what this is saying. Exactly the mindset that they're in. I'm a pretty empathetic guy, so I can generally, I have a good imagination, and I'm an emotional guy, so I sympathize with people very strongly, even people I hate and despise and denounce their mindset. It's still easy to get into, right? So these people don't even realize what they're doing, and that's the next step, right? Because they aren't empathetic at all. So they don't even understand how disturbing it is to someone like me, this paragraph. Maybe you don't find it disturbing either. I'll read it again. Companies, NGOs, and governments, often acting together, launched pilot programs and learning labs to figure out how to best meet the needs of particular communities, increasing the knowledge base of what worked and what didn't. Is that disturbing to you? It's disturbing to me. It's disturbing to me because they're not in these communities. They're not saying we're going to empower communities to decide for themselves what they're doing. They are saying, in their mindset, they're like, we have these particular this particular paradigm, these particular parameters that we want to fulfill, and we think some things are good and some things are bad, irrespective of what the people in these actual communities think, right? You can have a community that is nationalist, that is Christian, that is family-oriented. These people, it doesn't matter what those people want. It's like, well, they're not interconnected. They're not a part of a globalist organization. They don't have NGOs coming in and telling them what to do. Maybe they shun technology. See, to these people, that's not good. This is a bad community. It's a bad community because it doesn't fit with their machinations, with their plans for worldwide domination. So it's bad. So they have to go in and figure out how to help these people stop being the way they are. We have to help these people to stop relying on faith, to stop, caring about family. We have to help them be more like we want them to be. That's why this mindset, as subtle, as particular as it is disturbing to me, because again, I can't imagine ever being like, isn't it great that these people went into these communities and these foreign people came into this community and determined what was better for that community and made them do it, and changed their way of life to be better, to figure out what works and what doesn't. It's up to the community themselves. And if you want to empower that community, if you want to make that community better, then you can help them do what they want to do. You can provide them what they need to provide. But that's not the mindset they have. Their mindset is one of control. Their mindset is one of domination. Their mindset is one of solipsistic selfishness, where they say, we're right, globalism good, institutions good, we will come in and force this goodness upon these people, and it's a blessing, and you're welcome, right? You're welcome when I use my corporate power to, destroy your local government's ordinance, or, you're welcome for giving $100 million to a transgender community so they can castrate little boys. You're welcome. We're helping you. See, you were wrong. You were, your community was struggling with the acceptance of my satanic ideology. So we're going to help you by forcing it upon you. So they continue to fantasize about all of the different, global technology assessment office. Yes, we'll have a global office that will control all of the government. It'll be amazing. It'll be a consortium of nations, NGOs, and companies. We'll all establish one office that will control all of technology. It will provide easily accessible real-time information about the costs and benefits of various technology and applications to developing and developed country alike. All of these efforts translated into real progress on real problems, opening up new opportunities to address the needs of the bottom billion. The bottom billion, that comes from a book. This is just Globalist 101, right? Oh, man, this is like the longest video ever. I hope people are being... are finding it entertaining or illuminating, just to get into the minds of these evil, evil people. How y'all doing? The bottom billion, enabling developing countries to become engines of growth in their own right. Enabling developing countries to become engines of growth in their own right. Now, here we go. Here we see it laid out, clear and plain and coming through fine. In many parts of the developing world, economic growth rates increase due to a host of factors. See, everything's getting better when you just willingly go along with the globalist control structure. Improved infrastructure accelerated the greater mobility of both people and goods, and urban and rural areas got better connected. In Africa, growth that started on the coast spread inward along new transportation corridors. Again, this is just fantasy. This is just, man, if I was in charge, no one would be hungry because I would feed everyone. If they would just listen to me, I would make them be good. Increased trade drove the specialization of individual firms and the overall diversification of economies. In many places, hear this, traditional social barriers to overcoming poverty grew less relevant as more people gained access to a spectrum of useful technologies, from disposable computers to do-it-yourself windmills. Okay, first let's just take a brief moment to reflect on the levels, the depths, the many layers of retardation that are required for someone to write the words disposable computers. Okay, this is their fantasy, right? In 2010, they're sitting there imagining, what would a world be like? Well, what's a really cool futuristic contract? Well, what about like disposable computers? Like that sounds cool. That sounds awesome, right? Like you're just stupid. You're just dumb people who don't understand what is cool or interesting or possible or feasible or important at all, and you're entertaining other people of a similar ilk, right? Disposable computer. I mean, what does this even mean? And on top of that, what do they think disposable computers mean? What would they be used for? It's just like, again, they just put this in to make the idiots reading this feel like, it's just a code word. It's like a special password to be like, disposable compute, isn't that awesome? But do they understand computers are made out of heavy metals that are incredibly difficult to obtain, and that by disposing of those, you would increase the massive amounts of environmental destruction that are required to ascertain these minerals and materials? that these people would probably be very much against if they had any sort of intellectual consistency whatsoever. They'd say, somebody they'd be proofreading this, they'd go, disposable computers, we're not really down with destroying the world, and that's what disposable computers would require, so maybe we'd call them recyclable computers, and maybe then we have something. But anyway, these people are dumb. That's not the important part. That's just a side note. The important part is this part here I've highlighted, traditional social barriers to overcoming poverty. What could that be? What could that mean? Chat, any guess? Any guess on what are some traditional social barriers to overcoming poverty? What are some traditional social barriers to overcoming poverty? Let's see. I could imagine one of these being something like religion. That would be a traditional barrier. If your religion says you can't work, on a couple days a week, that's a barrier to you working seven days a week. What's another traditional social barrier? Women being in the house, right? If your tradition is that the wife stays home and cleans and cooks and takes care of the children, and the men go out and work, and that's your tradition. Well, that's a traditional barrier, social barrier to overcoming poverty. Religion, any sort. But they can't just say that, right? But this is exactly what they mean: is traditional social barriers to overcoming poverty are things that prevent these succubus, these parasites, in order to greater maximize your potential, greater maximize your productivity for their own machinations and desires, right? So just when they say, it's just these little statements that are, ubiquitous in this white paper, that if you just stop and think about it, if you first hear it and you go, in many places, traditional social barriers to overcoming poverty grew less relevant as more people gained used to go, okay, well, that's good. You don't want people to be in poverty, so it's good that they're able to overcome. But then you go, now wait, what are some social traditional barriers? Is it, religion? Is it some sort of traditional social organization that might prevent people from caring about nothing but consumerism and profit? Something that says, hey, profit's not the most important thing, so you don't need both people to work. It's actually more important to raise your kids. Is that the type of traditional social barrier to poverty that you're overcoming? Given the circumstances that forced these new heights of global cooperation and responsibility, you'll notice it's like, given the circumstances that forced these new heights of global cooperation and responsibility. Now, you remember the circumstances of the previous situation, the previous scenario was a worldwide plague that they totally are just guessing about and we're not planning on enacting whatsoever. It's just absolutely not a prediction. But that was actually an event. It was a situation a circumstance that would force new things to happen. In Clever Together, there is no situation. There is no circumstance. It's just like, things are going pretty well. People are worried about climate change. It's just, again, it's the, you let your dog poop on someone's yard and go, oof, man, it's, you got poop on your yard. It's like, you are the ones who forced us into this. The circumstances were that you exist. That's what forced us into these heights of global responsibility. But they're like, it's not our fault. I mean, it's just the way things are. We had to dominate you. We had to impose our restrictions over you. It's just so dumb. And then they have these other things like the Desert Tech Initiative to create massive thermal electricity plants to supply both North Africa and via undersea cable lines southern Europe. So just picture the world that they want to live in, and again, you come up with Brave New World. You come up with Europe being the place where people live, and then there's these big cables underneath the Mediterranean to North Africa, which is just like generating electricity, and it's just like you have. Well, we'll reserve that part of the world for generating the electricity for where we live over here, and they'll love that. And you're welcome. We're blessing you. It's just utter fantasy and stupidity. I mean, this whole thing just reads like the fevered wet dream of freshman communist. That's all this is. Reduced energy dependency enabled all of these countries and regions to better control and manage their own resources. In Africa, political architecture above the nation-state level like the African Union, strengthened. Oh, yeah. Can you hear them drooling? There's like, oh, we have the EU, we have the European Union, we're destroying them, we're flooding them with Africans, we're dominating them, we're destroying their nation states, we're making it as hard as possible to leave, and soon we'll have the African Union. Soon they will come under our grubby little hands, the common market for Eastern and Southern Africa. That's, it's just like just a fantastical fantasy version of the USMCA, or not the USMCA, that's one that Trump just came out with, but NAFTA, the TPP. They're like, yes, we'll have these international markets, we'll have supranational organizations that will be dictated by us, the good guys doing philanthropy. And in their prediction, by 2028, despite ongoing efforts to guide, quote, smart growth, it was becoming clear that the world could not support such rapid growth forever. See, they don't want to see too biased, right? So they're like, look, clever together, plan A is not all good. We might do too well. We might grow too fast. We might develop too quickly. And, we'll have to consider how to deal with just being too awesome. I love this. Info cruncher is grad's job of choice as data era dawns. It's just like... I'm sorry, you've been doing this for 40 years? I'm sorry, what, you thought info cruncher would be the #1 job in America in 2016? Are you an idiot? Are you trying to sound retarded? I mean, that is what I am, an info cruncher. So, if you want to refer to me now, I'm not an info, I'm an info cruncher. I crunch the best info, and once you've given me your info, it will be crunched, whether you like it or not. These fucking people. Radical U.S. and China emissions targets signal new era in climate change negotiations. It's like, yeah, okay, yeah, all right, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, yeah, sure. What happened in reality was that massive, because again, remember what I was talking about, the two houses, right? You got two houses, one that's just like fucking killing it, and the other maybe not doing so well. And the only way to get these to be equitable is to limit the growth of one while subsidizing the growth of the other. Well, that's what happened in reality with things like the Paris Peace Accord or Paris whatever Climate Accord or whatever it was called. Was exactly that. It was like, well, we'll all sign it, except China and India will be allowed to continue to grow and do all of their stuff and pollute way more than we do for another 20, 30 years, whereas you people will not be able to do anything. You'll have to totally constrict and contract your industries while also paying China and India billions of dollars, and that's how we'll get to it. So no, China has no emissions targets that they are even pretending to try to meet. Again, philanthropy. How are you, Mr. Billionaire? How will you be involved in controlling this? And again, they use this term bottom billion, which once again is a term from a book called Bottom Billion. That is a globalist tome. This is a virtual model world in which philanthropies use all the tools at their disposal to reinforce and bolster their work. And it's just great. Everything's great. Smaller philanthropies proliferate. Growing number of major donors emerging from the developing world because everybody's getting richer. Because, again, you go to that chart and it's because you have high globalization and high institutional control and domination of the society. And according to the people that run these organizations, everything will be great and everyone will be rich and charity and love will sprout and spread. Okay, you aren't just power hungry, right? You aren't just like desperate for control. No, it's for us. Oh, you're doing it for us. Oh, wow. What, you're not sacrificing anything of yourself? You're just manipulating everyone? You're a control freak, power hungry madman? Oh, but it's philanthropy. It's for us. It's because we don't know better. It's because you know better than us and we're just these stupid freedom-loving idiots that are standing in the way of your glorious communist world. There are considerable flows of talent between for-profit and non-profit sectors, and the line between these types of organizations are becoming increasingly blurred. That's what they want. This is their desire. This was plan A, right? This is what they thought they were going to get with Hillary Clinton in office. They were going to shut everything down. They were going to let their supranational organizations like the TPP overtake any sort of national sovereignty anyone had. The EU would be rock solid and continue to expand and constrict the rights and sovereignty of their nations. But wrench got thrown in the works, And so they had to resort to lockstep. They had to resort to plan B, which is we'll release a pandemic and we will force these people to come begging for our control. Jackasses, man. My God. I am an info cruncher. Smith, have you crunched that info yet? Sir, I'm crunching the info as fast. There's too much info, and my cruncher is just not working fast enough. In Clever Together, strong global cooperation on a range of issues drives technological breakthroughs that combat disease, climate change, and energy shortage. Trade and foreign direct investments spread technologies in all directions and make products cheaper for people in the developing world, thereby widening access to a range of technologies. The atmosphere of cooperation and transparency allows states and regions to glean insights from massive data sets to greatly improve the management and allocation of financial and environmental resources. Translation, they get control. They use information to dominate, right? Vastly improve the management and allocation of financial and environmental resources. These people, these absolutely criminally greedy people, think they deserve the right to manage and allocate financial and environmental resources. And standing in their way, well, it's practically like you're hurting all of humanity. If you stop these people from taking control and forcing you to be good in their eyes, you're practically destroying the entire universe. Sousveillance. I actually like this term that they use, but of course they're liars and they use it wrong. And again, remember, this is all predicated on the idea globalism good, institutional control good, right? That's what they think. And you can see that in this paragraph in the beginning. Clever Together, strong global cooperation on a range of issues drive technological breakthroughs that combat disease. Like, they literally think, they're like, man, if only all of these little disseparate, like, in my mind, if I see a town, I'm looking bird's eye view of a nice little Midwest town. If I see a hardware store here and a shoe store here, and they're all owned by individual shop proprietors, and a little cafe over here and another little cafe over here, and they have to compete with each other, and you go here to get your clothes at Pete's shop, and you go to Beth's shop to get your candles. And to me, that's a beautiful thing. It's decentralized. There's competition. There's friendly endeavors. The vision that these people have, that these world controllers have, is you remove all those little stores and you put them in Walmart. And you take all those little cafes and you put them in McDonald's. And so you have these big, massive, multinational institutions sitting there, and to them it's like, well, but we can get more products, and we can better economy, and it's a mindset that is foreign to me. But I can understand it. I can put myself in that mindset. You just have to be, it's like, you just have to put yourself in the mindset of a jackass. You just have to go, what would a jackass think about this? And that's what they think. This is what they think. They think the more control, which they call cooperation and transparency, like they actually think that the bigger an organization is, the more transparent it is. How is this? This is nonsense. This is what a jackass thinks. A donkey. Donkeys might think this way. Intelligent electricity, water distribution, and transportation system develop in urban areas. These, quote, smart cities, internet access is seen as a basic right by the late 2010s. And these are the plans that they're trying to do. And then okay, so they have this other little. Remember in the last scenario, you had a young woman cleaning up a river thanks to the benefit that her totalitarian government has been able to steal the control of their people, has been able to trick their people into religious like devotion and adherence to their dictates. And she was able to clean up a river and help everybody because the government's just so strong and powerful and unquestioned and can run roughshod over the backwards, poverty-stricken religious beliefs of the people that live there. We will better them by destroying their way of life. Fucking jackasses. Remember, that was the first story. We end our second scenario with this second story of a man in the World Meat Science Lab. And it's just what I mean, isn't it just so amazing that by just giving control over to the globalists, that just by allowing them to dictate what we all need and you know, where resources should go and who should get money and who, you know, who deserves transportation, if we just surrender to them, then everything's better, and all over the world, they're all working together. It's just all over the world, working together right here in his lab. He also had access to seemingly infinite amounts of data and information on everything. It was so much easier than those clunky keyboards and computers of the old days. Again, this is just like you're listening, like you absolute spoons, you absolute idiots, you fools, you dumbasses. It's like you really thought keyboards and computers were going to go away. You think you think what, iPads, your touchscreens are going to be the preferred method of communication and computer access in high-tech science labs? They're just dumb. These people are dumb and wrong about everything. The shift from lone wolf science to globally coordinated and open platform research has greatly accelerated the literally, they're just like, the more globalism, the better everyone does. That's what they believe. That's what they think. That's why if you stand up against globalism, they literally think you are making the world worse for everyone, because that's the mindset they're in. Hack attacks. We'll go quickly through these last two, because the first two are the important ones, because the first one, called Lockstep, which I called Plan B, is what's happening right now as we see it. You saw it laid out perfectly. They predicted, they established exactly what would cause people to beg them for control and how exactly that control would be implemented and how great it would be once they got that control. But that wasn't the first plan. First, they wanted us to willingly do it. They failed in that. They implemented Plan B. So Plan A and Plan B, lockstep and clever together, are the two most important ones, because they were the plan and the backup plan. These are different, and these are just trying to make what are actually good systems of existence, try to make them out to be bad. Essentially, they have a fantasy about more mudslides and earthquakes and all sorts of stuff, and they say these dire circumstances force tough trade-offs. In 2015, the U.S. reallocated a large share of its defense funding to domestic concerns, pulling out of Afghanistan, where the resurgent Taliban seized power once again. See, if America looks after its own people, that's not good. It's not good. No, we need America exerting power and working for these termites, working for these parasites. See, we, the American people, our money, our power, our very lives need to go towards upholding these monsters' plans for world domination. And if we don't, you want the Taliban to seize power? Look, if we don't always have Americans always there, it's almost like the only reason, it's almost like you could trick these people. You could go, look, if you don't help Americans, we're going to have to bring back our troops, and they're going to have to help here. And then maybe they'd be like, oh crap, we gotta help America deal with its domestic problems, or else they might not want to, be adventuring in endless wars in Afghanistan anymore. That's how they feel. So it's like they aren't upset that domestic concerns maybe are tearing America apart in this fantasy of theirs. They are more concerned that because of that domestic troubles, America won't be able to control other countries like Afghanistan anymore. They say by 2016, the global coordination and interconnectedness that had marked the post-Berlin Wall world was tenuous at best. Oh dear, oh no, oh goodness. With government power weakened, other rapidly disintegrating, and safety nets were evaporating. Violence and crime grew rampant. Oh no, without our rulers, without our government, without our top-down totalitarian, authoritarian, despot control, we're just a bunch of dumb kids, right? We're just a bunch of idiots that are just going to run around destroying each other without daddy and mommy to tell us what to do. Peter Schwartz, please, Peter Schwartz, won't you tell us not to do bad? We don't know any better. These people, they just have no respect for anybody that's not in their little club. Using retired 727s and other rogue aircraft, people crisscrossed the Atlantic from South America to Africa, transporting cocaine, weapons, and operatives. Drug and gun money became a common recruiting tool for the desperately poor. You can just see the people that are involved in this, that work for the CIA. They're like, wait a second, transporting cocaine, weapons, and operatives from South America to Africa? running drugs and money. That's our job. We're supposed to do that. The government's supposed to be the ones running the drugs and the money. We can't just let regular people out there doing it. That's chaos. We need to be doing it for our own plans. We're the government, damn it. And actually, I'll go ahead and take a trip back here where we look at CNAS, which, of course, the author, the director behind the scenarios upon which we are embarking, works for. He works for CNAS. Here's an interesting little note here. The CNAS U.S.-India Initiative is co-chaired by CNAS Board of Directors member Richard Armitage, former Deputy Secretary of State. If you haven't seen my previous entirely too long live stream entitled Eagle 2, you can go back and watch that, listen to that, read that document, because Richard Armitage was George Bush Sr.'s right-hand man who was intimately involved and one of the 5 members of the Deep State Foundation, which is not a vagary sort of thing. Deep State is not something that is sort of ethereal and inconsequential. The Deep State began in the late 60s when, to prolong and take advantage of the Vietnam War, the CIA got together, got approval from Lyndon Baines Johnson to put together a council of 5 people, including George W. Bush and Richard Armitage, to set up an illicit network of drug trafficking and basically mostly drug trafficking and drug selling in order to obtain an abnormal flow of revenue. Because basically the one way that the government and the Congress actually oversees intelligence agencies is they control the purse strings. So the CIA got together with Lyndon Baines Johnson and said, look, we're going to create an alternative method by which we get resources. So we don't have to go ask Congress for permission. Congress won't be able to poke their little noses in and say, what are you using this money for? Because they're not going to know we have the money, because the way we got the money was by setting up a false airline and running drugs and selling drugs to the people stationed in Vietnam. So Richard Armitage was one of the 5 founding members. He was the right-hand man to George Bush Sr. and was involved in the establishment of the real deep state. Eagle 2 is the video on my channel that documents that quite thoroughly. So it just strikes me with a bit of irony, a bit of humor, if you will, that these people say, oh, it's just be terrible when you have all these people running drugs and guns. Well, it's the government that's supposed to do that, damn it. Criminal networks also grew highly skilled in counterfeiting illicit goods. The context of weak health systems, corruption, and inattention to standards, either within countries or from global bodies like the World Health Organization, tainted vaccines entered the public health systems of several African countries. In 2021, 600 children in the Côte d'Ivoire died from a bogus Hep B vaccine, which paled in comparison to the scandal sparked by mass deaths from the tainted anti-malarial drug years later. The deaths and resulting scandals sharply affected public confidence in vaccine delivery, which is just hilarious to me, because you'll never, ever get any of these globalists to admit there might be danger of vaccines. But in their own white papers, they say, there's actually a major danger in vaccines. Vaccines may kill hundreds of people if we're not careful about it. But if you worry about that, happening, you're a goddamn conspiracy theorist and should probably be put in jail. But they're allowed to consider this possibility. They're allowed to pay attention to this, right? And look, they give it away, right? They've showed their hands. They've taken the mask off. Literally, this quote begins with, we have this love affair with strong central states. These people are globalists. They're centralists. They're totalitarians. They're authoritarians. They literally are like, we have a love affair with strong central states. They love China. They love despots. They love authoritarianism. All they want is control. They despise freedom. They despise human individuality. They despise, the selfish drive that has, inspires our love of glory and valor and achievement. They despise that. You are nothing but a cog in a machine. You are nothing but a piece of a society. Everything you do should not be for your own benefit. It should be for the benefit of the society at large, not because you yourself see yourself as a valuable member of a community fulfilling your responsibilities in that role, but because you were told to, because you have to, because if you try not to, they'll punish and destroy you. They're so disrespectful of the human spirit, and it oozes through their words. We'll hurry up. We'll hurry up as we get through this. verifying the authenticity of anything was basically there's like the heroic efforts of several companies and NGOs. It's just never once in this entire white paper is it about an individual. Is it about multiple individuals? Is it about, fulfilling people, creating a good life, creating an enjoyable life? It's about how can we produce the most? How can we create the most consumers, right? And again, I hate to keep harping on this, but I can't talk about this stuff without being reminded of passages from Brave New World where they talk about things like, they don't want people playing soccer because the soccer ball is cheap. They want people playing rocket tennis. They want people playing, gyroscope golf, right? Because then you have to buy a bunch of equipment and buy a bunch of stuff, right? So this is the mindset of these people. It's not how can we best make people safe and fulfilled and, expressing their humanity. It's not about that. It's about how do we squeeze the most out of these people? How do we, the economic imperative is supreme to all others. The positive effects of mobile and internet revolutions were tempered by their increasing fragility as scamming and viruses proliferated. Preventing these networks from achieving reliability required to become the backbone of developing economies or a source of trustworthy information for anybody. And again, just put it through these people's mindsets. These people don't believe in a universal truth. They don't believe in a objective truth, right? They are stuck in a subjective understanding of the world that says we are right, we are good. If we were in charge, everybody else would fall in the line and it would make everybody better, right? So to them, when they say trustworthy information, what they mean is our information, right? They're like, my information, the trustworthy information, not the information that contradicts me. That's not trustworthy because doesn't benefit me, right? It's a solipsistic, selfish attitude. But they're like, not all of the hacking was bad. There's GMOs. Oh, we got GMOs to look forward to. I mean, this other stuff might not be good, but at least we can still manipulate the DNA of rice. And this is just a network of renegade African scientists who'd returned to their home country after working in Western multinationals unveiled the first range of new GMOs that boosted the agricultural productivity of the continent. They're just like, they're just these nerdy, out of touch billionaires sitting in a room together going, how can I you know what I want in this? You know what I really want in this? There's so much downer in this scenario. What if there's Africans that save the world? Yeah, put that in. Say there's a group of Africans that because of globalism save the world. It's like, I should do my own white paper, shouldn't I? I should do my own 4 scenarios. It'll be the same scenarios. It'll just be the right interpretation. The wealthy also capitalize on the loose regulatory environment to experience with advanced medical treatments and other under-the-radar activities. See, if you just would stop trying to regulate the wealthy, they would create globalism and cure the world. No place wanted... It's like, okay, it's talking about how bad... Remember, they're trying to tell you that this is bad, right? That with a lack of globalism and a lack of institutional... top-down control, everything's bad. Everything's terrible. And what do they say to prove this? They say no place wanted more people, especially more poor people. It was often a retreat to the... I got to read this whole thing. Those who couldn't buy their way out of the chaos, which was most people, retreated to whatever safety they could find. Now, see, they're feeling for you peasants. They're fine, right? Bernioff, he owns a compound in Hawaii. Peter Schwartz, multimillionaire, they'll hang out with their cousin that runs Goldman Sachs. Like, they're good. But do you see how much they feel for you? They're like, man, the peasants, the plebs, the plebeians, like they're gonna have trouble. They're not gonna be like us up here in our castles. Oh, poor people. How do we help them? How do we control them? How do we tell them to stop hurting each other? They're like, no place wanted more people to spit. They're like, oh, isn't that horrible? Isn't that horrible that there's not a bunch of poor people moving in? How do we get back to the world where all the poor people were coming here? How do we get back to that? It's horrible that all of these poor people aren't here. And it's like without us, the globalist masters, to control and dictate to these people and keep them in a brain swell of thinking that they're safe and under complete control, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to retreat to the familiar. Family ties, religious beliefs, or even national allegiance. My God, what a just, I mean, can you imagine the world where people are so, unwilling to submit themselves to globalist control that they rely on such antiquated, such barbarous things as family, religion, and the nation state? It's just, it makes me sick to my stomach, quite frankly, and we cannot allow these people to retreat to these things. I mean, it's like they're just dumb animals to us, and so we understand that they're just like stupid herd-like animals that are just retreating because they don't understand. We're the hawks up here, right? We're the wolves who understand better, but they're just retreating like a bunch of scared calves running back to the barn to get away from the loud noise. It's just the level of just speaking down to, right, the conceit that comes through this. It's just like it was often a retreat they're retreating to the familiar. We're out here in the sun with our science and our globalism and our international control of finances. It's just, we're the good guys out here in the sun, but they're retreating to the shadows, to the shadowy netherworld of family and religion and nation states. They despise these things. They hate these things because they stand as a barrier to their domination. They are preventing the absolute control of these monsters. That's why they hate them. And they honestly see themselves. They see their own control. They see their own domination in a globalistic control system as good and, progressive. They see it as progressive. And it's the same verbiage that you see politically, right? What is progress? Progress is giving your 3-year-old to a drag queen to teach things, right? You go to your tutoring session with Lady Marmalade, or whatever the hell you want to call the gentleman with the big beard and the gut and the questionable pictures on his computer. It's progressive to send your child to them and then to castrate them when they're 3 years old. That's progress. See, if you don't like that, well, you're retreating. You're going backwards. You're reverting back to your superstitious and undeveloped religion, family, and nation. Ugh. Listen to who they grouped together. Trust was afforded to those who guaranteed safety and survival, whether it was a warlord, an evangelical preacher, or a mother. Yeah, no mothers. No mothers when the globalists in charge. Just absurd. It's just absurd. The operational model in this world is a fortress model in which philanthropic organizations coalesce in a strong single unit to combat fraud and lack of trust. Again, this is when it says the role of philanthropy in Hack Attack, the role of philanthropy in this particular scenario. This is the marching orders. This is here's what to do if this happens. If we find that our power is slipping, and they don't put too much thought into this one because they're conceited. They really thought cleverer together was going to be the path. Plan B seems to be implemented now. This is like plan C or D, and you can see what they say is like, all right, you need to have a fortress model, okay? You need to coalesce. You need to get all these different philanthropies into one single thing, call it something like, I don't know, the Clinton Foundation, and, bring them together and really maximize the potentiality of your institutions to exercise control by coalescing together. You're too weak apart. We need you together in a fortress to combat and destroy the things like religion and family. Less global, again, so this is just the marching order, the less global approach, retreating back to their home countries or a few countries that they know well and perceive as being safe. So it's basically saying, if everything starts to fall apart, we're going to have to go back to the national destruction. We're going to go back to the, piecemeal domination of the world because globalism seems to have run its course. I love this. The internet is overrun with spam and security threats and becomes strongly associated with illicit activity, especially on dark webs, where there's no government can modify, identify, or restrict activities. Literally, these people are just control freaks. They just literally think that the government needs to dictate everything. They need to always be in control. They need to always be monitoring, identifying, restricting things or else chaos, right? They have such little faith in humanity. Because these people are evil, right? Because these people are evil, and they are unsympathetic in that they don't understand that most people aren't evil. Most people in their hearts are good. I'd say all people in their hearts have the potential to be good and to serve others and to be self-sacrificial and to follow, the path of Jesus in terms of just the goodness that you can represent and embody. These people are evil. These people have no morality. They have no spirituality. They have no belief in a higher power. They have no belief in a soul or a purpose to life, right? So they think everybody else thinks like that too. And they're like, these people are willing participants in the system of control, right? Because they're like, man, if I didn't have the system of control, I'd be fucking evil, right? So they think everybody else needs that as well. With the cost of cosmetic surgery dropping, procedures like lunchtime facelift became routine among the emerging middle class. Again, the people that wrote this white paper, the people that are in these clubs, they would do that, wouldn't they? Wouldn't these people go, oh, a lunchtime facelift, that sounds great. They have no conception that that's abhorrent to most normal people, that that's a disgusting sort of idea, that something would be as a facelift, a plastic surgery that alters your physical appearance would be as casual as a lunchtime, fingernail appointment. No, these people are sick. These people are monsters, and they think you are too. And this story is not even worth getting into. It's just a guy going to Botswana and being a jackass there. They had none of the high-tech biometric scanning checkpoints. He's like, it's so dangerous. They don't have any biometric scanning. I'm so scared. And we've reached our final scenario, a mere 2.5 hours later. My God, has it really been 2.5 hours? Jeez and Pete's. Folks, you can support me by going to InfoWarsStore.com. Tell them I sent you, and you'll get the same sales that we always have because they're absurd. And if we were to give any more off, we wouldn't make any money. But yes, InfoWarsStore.com. I don't have a Patreon. Maybe I do. I don't promote my Patreon. I don't make a living outside of my day job. So please do go to InfoWarsStore.com to support these absurdly long deep dives into the fevered dreams of totalitarian madmen. We'll burn through this one, all right? Smart Scramble, okay, but this is important. Okay, this is important. I almost skipped right over this one. The United States, too, lost much of its presence and credibility on the international stage due to deepening debt, debilitated markets, and a distracted government. This, in turn, led to the fracturing or decoupling of many international collaborations started by or reliant on the U.S.'s continued strength. Did you hear what I just heard? Can I translate this for you applicably? What they're saying is, it's like, I don't know if you know this, in China, they consider the bile of a bear bile, to be medicinal. So they cut holes into bears, they harvest bile, and they keep the bears alive, and they keep this hole open. They harvest the bile. So this is a similar sort of relationship that America has with globalists. We're the bear, and they're harvesting us while we're alive. And what this paragraph is saying is, if we let things get too far, if we don't keep the globalist control on everything, well, that bear is going to get sick. And that's a horrible thing, because if that bear gets sick, we can't harvest the bile. So it's not bad that the bear is sick. It's only bad because then we can't get something out. We can't control it. We can't suck its life force out of it, right? This is just the mindset of the elites. The United States, and they're admitting it here, right? They're like the United States is our cash cow. The United States is our property. It is our fruit to be squeezed and juiced and discarded. It is our bear chained in the basement of a Chinese sweatshop to be bled of its life force to serve us. And wouldn't it be a horrible thing if that bear died, because then we wouldn't be able to use the bile? So they're admitting it here, right? It's like, and again, this is why you see all of the anger and fury when Trump tries to defund things, tries to defund their globalist organs. they freak out because they know, they're like, if we are not able to take advantage of and suck the life force of Americans, then our plans won't work. Talk about China and Africa. They just love China so much. And like this, it's like, again, this is, you need to download this. You need to read it. You need to share it with your friends, because it's just things like this. They say present challenges were too pressing. In the developed world, unemployment rates skyrocketed. So did the xenophobia, as companies and industries gave the few available jobs to native-born citizens, shunning foreign-born applicants. Isn't that awful? And these people, they hate that. They really are just like, damn it, why can we not steal the nationality of other people? If they're literally like, man, if the economy isn't doing well, then they might not allow us to fill their country with foreigners, and that's not good. So we got to keep that economy up. They say by 2018, London had been drained of immigrants as they headed back to their home countries, taking their education and skills with them. My God, how will England survive? How will London maintain? I mean, we have a quota of stabbings that we have to upkeep. Who is going to be systematically raping the white girls if all of these immigrants go back? Who is going to provide that necessary industry of terrorist attacks if these wonderful geniuses go back to their home countries? Fuck their home countries. They should be left without anybody of value and skill. We need them to destroy our children, to corrupt our minds, to overtake our institutions. That's what we need them here for. I mean, really, it's just, sometimes you get a view into the mind of the disconnected, of the elite, of the monsters, the globalists that run things, and it's just like peeling back it's like picking up a stone right outside, and underneath is just centipedes and spiders, and it's just that's you like look in their ear, and it just looks like a desecrated coffin inside. It's just disgusting. This is how they think, man. This is how they think. London has been drained of immigrants, and they headed back to their home country, taking their education and skills with them. They know that's not the case. They're fantasizing. Most people in communities had no choice but to help themselves, and increasingly one another. My God, how awful. How horrible is this, right? Once again, we are illuminated. We are allowed to glimpse into the decrepit, disgusting mindset of these people when they're like, if we aren't here to control and dominate people, they're going to help each other and themselves. Oh, but there were silver linings in this new situation. Government capacity improved in more advanced parts of the developing world, where economies had already begun to generate a self-sustaining dynamic before the 2008 to 2010 crisis. So it's just like, there is a silver lining, guys. It's not all bad, okay? Everybody's at each other's throats. The global system's shut down, but at least some governments are getting stronger. So at least we have that to look forward to. Makeshift, good enough technology solutions addressing everything from water purification to harnessing energy to improving crop yield and disease control emerged to fill the gaps. Communities grew tighter. Micro-manufacturing, communal gardens, and patchwork energy grids were created at the local level for local purposes. Many communities took on the aura of co-ops, some even launching currencies designed to boost local trade and bring communities together better. That is heaven. That is a wonderful society. This is the path forward. Decentralization. Water purification, energy development, improved crop yield, disease control, community gardens, micro-manufacturing. This is the good stuff. But they're literally saying, they're like, this is plan F, this is the worst plan, this is awful, we have to do everything in our power to prevent this nightmare. This is what a nightmare sounds like to a globalist, is community gardens, is communities growing tighter, micro-manufacturing, patchwork energy grids that cannot be controlled or manipulated on a massive scale. This is the path forward. This is the only way to defeat these people, is to establish a decentralized society. Decentralized, uncontrolled, ground up, sort of a microcosm patchwork development. This is beautiful and genius and amazing, and it's a nightmare to them because that's what defeats them. We don't need them. We don't need massive organizations controlling us and telling us what to do. We need each other. We need tight communities. We need self-sufficiency. We need decentralization. That's what is required for freedom and humanity to grow and prosper. These people want to control, they want to organize, they want to restrict, they want to monitor, they want to inhibit, they want to manipulate, they want to dictate. They're power hungry. They're evil. Their every design is predicated on decreasing the ability for people to decide for themselves what is good, and to become nothing but receptacles for the dictates of the world controllers. It's disgusting. This is a good life. This is, and they have less than no interest. They actually despise this. I'm just going to read it again. This is literally, to them, this is the worst scenario. This is like they've been defeated, and they're describing to their fellows the hell world that they foresee. And they say, makeshift technology solutions addressing everything from water purification to harnessing energy to improved crop yield and disease control emerged to fill the gaps. Communities grew tighter. Micro-manufacturing, communal gardens, and patchwork energy grids were created at the local level for local purposes. Many communities took on the aura of co-ops, some even launching currencies designed to boost local trade and bring communities closer together. Beautiful. Sounds like a beautiful goddamn thing, and they despise it. And they despise it strictly because you can't control this sort of thing, right? You can't come in and shut off the power for an entire state or entire country if every community has its own power generation. You can't control the food supply and therefore control the lives of the people underneath you if they all survive on their own garden, right? You can't control people if their systems of life and their support systems are decentralized. So they hate that because they can't control it. They hate us because we promote freedom and individuality, because it is godly, because it is good, because it is holy, because they are the dirt. They are the ants, the devils, the demons, the fallen, the goblins. These are the goblins. We're reading a goblin newsletter here. We're reading a white paper from orcs to other orcs, from succubus vampires to other succubus vampires, saying, God, those darn humans keep wearing neck braces and they're not letting us help them, right? They keep breaking out of our chains and messing up our helping of them. By 2025, collaboration was finally improving, with ecosystems of research and sharing, many of them virtual, beginning to emerge. Yet without major progress in global economic integration and collaboration, many worried that the good ideas would stay isolated and survival and success would remain local and not a global or national phenomenon. And thus we end, my friends, the scenarios conjured by the totalitarian fantasies of Peter Schwartz and the like. I mean, they just literally say, because without global coordination, innovation cannot scale on its own. Which is just a lie. Just look at history. Philanthropy operations are decentralized. Headquarters are less important. All right, I don't really need to. Talented immigrants are forced to return to their countries of origin. It's like, what about the countries of origin? Why don't you want these countries of origin to have a talent pool that can compete with the others? Oh, it's because you're helping them. Oh, you're helping them. You're helping them by taking all of the productive, talented people out of their societies and bringing them here to serve your globalist machinations. You're helping them, right? Okay. It's a horrible thing when talented, well-educated, prosperous immigrants return to their own dirty, rotten countries, right? Right, globalists? Isn't that right? You want them here so you can control them, so you can use their talents to your own ends. You don't want them going home and helping their own people. That's what you're there for, right? You're the only ones that are allowed to help and control them because you're in charge. You're the billionaire. These people are sick, man. Concluding thoughts as we end it. 3 key insights. First, the link between technology and governance is critical to consider in better understanding how technology could be developed and deployed. A second recurring theme in the scenarios is that development work will require different levels of intervention, possibly simultaneously. In some scenarios, philanthropic organizations and other actors in development face a set of obstacles in working with large institutions, but may face a yet unfolding set of opportunities to work with non-traditional partners. Even individuals, the organization that's able to navigate between these levels and actors is best positioned to drive success. The third theme highlights the potential value of scenarios as a critical element of strategy development. This is kind of showing their card a little bit in the scenarios. The final thought, the final thing that you really need to learn is how awesome scenarios are, how you need to use more scenarios, how aren't we great and aren't we awesome and didn't we predict everything perfectly? But yeah, they want international development, by which they mean international control. That's it. That's the document, Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development, by the Rockefeller Foundation and Peter Schwartz and BlackRock and the neocons and the Rockefeller Foundation, globalists. And just once again, I remind you, this was written in 2010. We are 10 years into their 15 to 20 year long predictions. As we've seen, their first plan has failed. Their second plan is now being enacted. And through God's grace, we will one day get to their nightmare, my dream of a decentralized, self-sufficient, individually sovereign world in which we can all bring about our own dreams, our own loves, express ourselves in our own ways without having to care what these absolute cretins and pathetic rodents think we should do with our lives. So. Wow, what a program. My God, what a marathon event you've all been engaged in with me. I'm so glad you've all been able to be here. This has been really fun for me. I'm going to export this out and go on, how long has it been? Only 2 hours? I'll put it up on band.video. You can follow me on Instagram still. I will be making a new. Whoa! All right, I'm still streaming. Let me change this. Hold on.
Warning.
Whoa.
Warning.
That ain't right.
Warning.
Warning. Yeah, I'm just letting it all fall apart here. Technically, intellectually, physically, we're all just collapsing. Oh, thanks for sticking around, guys. Any questions y'all have for me? Thank you, Mob Tech. Thank you, CPL Punishment. Thank you, Phil Swift. Thank you, Bourbon Days. Thank you, Dick Be Real. That D-Live looks great, man. D-Live looks so much better than YouTube. Who knew? What a world. I think y'all are a little bit behind me, so I'm not hearing any questions. Maybe y'all haven't heard it yet, but I really do appreciate y'all being here. Please do share this around. If you feel like it, cut it up, put it out in individual pieces. So it's the weekend now, baby, and I'm done. I may cut this out to put it up in smaller form on Monday, but this has been a lot of important stuff. I hope you've all appreciated it. The song is supposed to loop, and there we are. All right, thanks for sticking with me through the technological catastrophes, and yeah, that's it. This is Harrison Smith signing off for Off Limits News. Go to offlimits.news to find the sources that I've used here in this program. Go to Off Limits News on Instagram, and just go on Twitter and be looking out for my pretty face next to a yet-to-be-determined screen name that somebody else will make, not me. I'm not allowed on Twitter. I'm a good boy. Alright. I'm going to play the intro one more time in case people want to see it. I'm quite proud of it. It's actually an older one. I'm going to make a new one soon. I'm going to keep doing more live streams. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. You can go somewhere. But I'll be back. Just make sure to keep an eye out. I love you all. Infowars.com, InfoWarsStore.com, band.video. Please share these links. We are under complete attack. Twitter's being deleted. We're being sued. It's all sorts of bullshit and nonsense happening. Thank God we have you, the audience out there, taking care of us. We really do. I really, really do appreciate it. Love you all. Cheerio then.
Warning. Warning. The following information has not been approved by the Trust and Safety Council. Viewing or disseminating this content may result in a reduction of your social score. This change will be instant and permanent and cannot be appealed. If this material was sent to you by private message or posted on the public page, click the report button or call the U.S. Hate Crime Hotline to alert the authorities. Your biometric information, including heartbeat and facial expression, may be recorded by your device while viewing this broadcast. This message brought to you by the Independent Oversight Board.
It's a scam.
Did it get hot? I got Lana. I got hairy legs.
Sometimes they're beginning to buy the conspiracy theories.
America is awake.
What about microchipping your child?
Give me a fucking gun. I'll shoot you.
I would fucking die for Trump 2020. I would die for him.
I'm on, man.
Disinformation campaigns are so effective because they don't have to be false. It can be true information that is misallocated.
With humanity. We're asking to be allowed to live like human beings. And God, you tell us that this is too much to ask. You're sick. You're definitely sick. How can you tell me that it's too much to ask to be a human being?